Hello and happy New Year's, Blueprint listeners. Can you believe it? 2025 is here. Now, I know that may not be a huge deal to you, and I know there's a lot of people out there that just go to bed like any other night and wake up like any other day, but I like to take New Year's Day a little bit different. For me, New Year's Day is both a time for reflection and gratitude, as well as taking some time to think about what I want to accomplish in the upcoming year and get specific about what that means. Over many years, I've honed a system and a way of thinking about this process that has worked really well for me. And I thought sharing it might make for an interesting mini episode to kick off the year. So this episode is for those career planners, goal setters, go-getters out there who are on a New Year's Day high with that feeling of new beginnings and want to come up with a way to execute on those big plans for 2025. I mentioned in the first episode of Season 5 that I'd be trying some new things on the podcast, and this will be one of those episodes. So here's what we're going to do. In this special solo New Year's episode, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the books I've read and the strategies I've employed to help make me a more effective person, and give you some nuggets of wisdom that you can hopefully take with you into the new year to do the same as well. Some of the older listeners may have long ago worked out similar systems that work for them, but I imagine there's quite a few younger listeners just starting out and getting into the workforce that this episode may be a huge help for. I know this is one thing that could have been really useful to me earlier on in my career, so whoever you are and wherever you are in your career, I hope this helps you out as well. One of the things I've always thought that was a superpower of mine is the ability to be very intentional about what I spend my time on. And I've come up with a system of how I do that. And it's a system that's enabled me to prep for becoming a SANS instructor, write various courses, create content, and learn all sorts of new skills along the way. And it's served me really well. And what better time to talk about that process and mental models associated with it than at the start of the year when others might be thinking about the same thing. When it comes to career success, focus is what I think matters most. You have to think about a laser versus a light bulb, for example. While a light bulb can cast a little light everywhere and maybe light up a room, that's great. When a light is focused into a laser, it can go miles. You can shoot it off into space, you can cut metal, you can do all sorts of other fantastic things with it that a light bulb would never be able to do. And that is the power of focus, right? What we're looking to do here is come up with how we can take all that energy that we have and direct it in one direction. And when you can do that, what you're able to achieve is going to surprise even yourself. In this episode, I want to discuss my personal system for ensuring focus on what really matters. We're going to discuss how to choose what to do, how to make sure it's going to get you where you really want to go, and the actual tactics and systems you can apply on a daily basis to make sure you can achieve whatever it is you're looking to accomplish in 2025. I promise you, even if you think that there's a task this year that you'd like to accomplish that is too big, there's actually a really good chance that you can get it done if you apply the right techniques for focus. So let's get into it. Step 1 is setting your goal and knowing why it's important to you. Now, this may sound like a very basic thing, but it's not. It's one of the most important decisions that you're going to make, because what you choose here drives the entire rest of the process and what you're going to be doing throughout the year. So you need to choose very, very wisely. What do I mean by that? In step 1, your goal is to consider and ask, what do I really want and why do I want it? Your initial answer to this question may be either a high-level answer, such as I want to get a job that I love to take care of my family, or maybe a lower-level answer, such as a specific skill you want to learn. Maybe you want to learn malware reverse engineering or something else directly related to your job. No matter where you start, I encourage you to follow that answer by either going up or down the levels of abstraction and asking, why do I want that? Or what does that mean? So at this stage, what we're trying to think of is something that's a fairly big goal that might reasonably take you a year or longer to achieve. Let's assume you said something more tactical and detailed to start with. You may want to build a new skill, right? Malware reverse engineering, for example. So why do you want to learn that skill? Think about that first. Is it because it's fun, because it's interesting, because it will get you a promotion to maybe a senior analyst position? Okay, great. Why is that important to you? Why do you want a promotion? Why is it important to learn interesting skills? Maybe your answer is obvious, right? You'd like to earn more money. Well, we all like that, of course, but why do we want to earn more money? Of course, more money is nice, but is there something specific behind that need? How will that extra money change your life in a very realistic way? Would you go on more vacations with your family? Would you reinvest it in yourself and your own learning and use it to double down on your career trajectory? The goal here is to understand why those things are truly important to you and follow it as deep as you can possibly go. You should be chasing that goal all the way to the point where you can connect a specific thing you want to your big why. Simon Sinek has a legendary TED Talk about this called Start With Why. It's a framework that gets into how what you do every day on a day-to-day basis needs to align with your values and purpose. Now, he's talking about a business, but it makes sense as a human as well. If you don't know what your values or purpose is as a person, then you don't know how what you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis actually aligns with those things or really anything at all. And that means it might be hard to stay motivated on doing what you're trying to accomplish. There's an alternative but similar method and technique here called the five-fold why technique that can be applied that will help you understand what you really want. I'll put both of those things in the show notes if you want to check those kind of resources out. Taking a lower level tactical goal and aligning it all the way up the chain to trace to your purpose and your values and what you really want as a person should make it clear why that lower level goal or skill is truly important in your life, and hopefully make it clear and motivating every day as to why you are doing that more mechanical task that you're doing as part of getting that project done. You're getting it done because ultimately you want to make your life better for your family or something like that, right? It's important to have that traceability. Maybe when you first thought of something, you thought of a higher level value and purpose, but don't know exactly how to put those values into action in the best way for a new goal for 2025. Maybe you have a high level goal that's too vague, and it's something maybe like, I want to be happy at work in a job that I love. Instead of asking, why is that important, which helps you go upward, to go lower, you need to ask, what does that mean, or what does that look like? So, for example, you want to have a job where you're happy. Well, okay, what are the components of a job that makes you happy? Is it having a new challenge every day? Is it having a variety of tasks? Is it learning new skills? All of those things could be a valid list, and many, many more. You want to make a list and define what being happy, in this case, would actually look like to you in a job. And you now have a list of attributes you'd like to see in a little bit more concrete of definition. And then again, we ask the same question again. Well, if you want to learn new skills, what new skills? Is there a specific set of them that you need to have? What does it take to learn those skills? What are the types of variety of tasks you might want to see? What makes a team or coworkers fun and great to be around? You want to gain as much clarity and definition as possible here, to the point where you can say something like, if I were to have X, Y, and Z, that will get me to where I think I want to be, and that makes it so that I will be achieving this higher level goal if I have this set of 5 lower level things. It takes a high level concept, makes it more concrete, and it gives you something very specific to aim at. This is just the first step, but it's very important because it gives you the longer and nearer term goals that you will be using as a North Star. It isn't just a goal floating around in a vacuum that you hope aligns to something that matters. It's one that you've traced all the way to the top and ties who you are as a human and what you're trying to achieve all the way down to the bottom to a specific set of tasks that you want to get to. Now that we've seen the goal off in the distance, it's time to plan a route to get there. Like the saying goes, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So we first have to decide where we're going, and that's what step 1 is all about. Now it's time for step 2, where we plan the specific path we are going to take. Step 2 is all about translating from long and medium-term goals into much shorter-term tactical and maybe even micro goals. This might again seem silly, but here's the thing. We've all done this before. You start out a new year with a bunch of ideas and things you want to do, certs you want to get, projects you want to undertake. And as you go throughout the year, you say, oh yeah, I got an entire year ahead of me, right? No problem at all. But you find at the end of the year, life kept getting in the way and all those things kept getting pushed forward to the point where at the end of the year, you realize you maybe got none of them done or a very, very small set of them. And all because you kept thinking, oh, there's more time for this. And there didn't end up being enough time. What's the problem here? Well, people tend to overestimate what they can do in the time scale of a year. And so you make a long list of items and then you keep pushing when you're going to start those items forward because life happens, but you realize near the end you're in a time crunch and then you don't have any time to do any of those things. On the flip side, people often also underestimate what is possible in the shorter term, maybe around the month to weeks long scale. Meaning you likely don't realize the power of a single focused week or month of time, but you need to be able to use that week or month of time correctly if you want to get those things done. I read a book a while back called The 12-Week Year, and the idea from that book has changed my life. Instead of operating on a what can I get done this year mindset, which is likely to fail you, mentally bring that time window back to a single quarter, or even shorter than that, perhaps. In other words, take that yearly goal from step 1 and break it down into 1/4 size pieces and ask yourself, is this small goal, 25% of my big goal, something I can actually get done in Q1? You're much more likely to know what is going to happen in Q1 in terms of your calendar and your schedule. And as you may have guessed, from this point, the next step is to further break down that goal into individual months, and then ideally weeks, and then ultimately daily actions you can take. On a shorter time scale, you actually are going to know what's going to come up on your calendar. And so you can be much more realistic about what can really happen and then put those pieces back together to hopefully trace up to that bigger, longer term goal. And if you realize you can't, maybe you've misset that goal and you set yourself up for failure in the first place. And in this case, you would know ahead of time. So again, while this may seem obvious, I find that very few people actually do this or think this way. Have you ever broken down your New Year's resolution into what you need to get done this week or this day to track towards it? I'm guessing most people likely haven't. And when it's a big, lofty goal, it's easy to just feel good. Hey, I set a goal, and that goal, I'm assuming I'm going to get it done at some point in this year. But you may never get it done. When you break it down like this and say, well, here's what I need to do this week or tomorrow if I want to get toward that goal, reality hits, and that can be scary. But more importantly, if you've done it and you've done it right, doing those things also guarantees success. And that's what matters, right? I find that once I have a long-term goal and break it down recursively into smaller and smaller pieces, it becomes much more easy to actually work on those small items and then get myself to that big end goal. So your task for this step is to do exactly that. Take your yearly goal and resolve it into quarterly, monthly, weekly chunks of work, and then see if it still seems realistic and something that you can do. If it's not, you've likely chosen a goal that's too big for the timescale, and you can adjust and set yourself up for success. Another book I like a lot that I'll mention here that's related is called The One Thing. This book helps you think about what steps are truly the most important for you to work on the daily timescale. In short, the core idea of the book is to ask yourself every single day, what one thing can I do today such that by doing it, everything else will become easier or unnecessary? Those who have taken LDR 551 may have recognized this quote. I have it on one of the slides in that class, and it's called the focusing question. And if you ask yourself that on a daily basis, the things you do today can help remove work from tomorrow or make tomorrow easier in a way that's very important and will compound over time. So check that book out for more details if you're interested in that. The next part of step 2 is having a system for tracking and writing down the things that you need to do to see your progress and not forget where you're headed. Here's my advice on this. After doing this for almost 10 years now, keep it simple. It's very tempting to go crazy with this, using Notion templates or complex Obsidian setups and multiple nested levels of tracking and notes and data-driven execution. And that's all great and it's fun and exciting to set up, but don't lose sight of the goal. The work here is the work, not the meta work to track the work. And so I find that using something that is simple is what leads to success here. Do not over-engineer this. I promise you, if you're anything like me, you're going to be tempted to do it. I have tried over-engineering a solution for this multiple times, and it never sticks. Here's what you need in a system for tracking what you need to do. You need a fast way to make a to-do list divided into sections. You need an area that acts a little bit like a calendar to see what is coming up in the week and months ahead so that you know what is feasible to actually do. You need a place to put those to-do list items that you have separated on your daily calendar area and plan what you're actually going to do on a day-to-day basis. And you'd like to have access to that entire system from any device that you have. So laptops, mobile devices, on the internet via browsers, whatever you might need, right? For me, the program I've had the most success with here is OneNote, and I'm going to describe in the next step how specifically I use it. I chose OneNote because OneNote is free, it's everywhere, it's every platform, and it's on mobile. And I make basically one page for every week of my life, and I fill it with the activity that I need to take care of that week. Another option for this is a tool like Obsidian. In fact, in 2024, I did use Obsidian for all my tracking. And while it was really good for general note taking, I ultimately found it a little bit too complex for my planning system. And I'm planning on reverting back to OneNote for 2025. Although I expect many of you out there could make it work. So that might be a close second to OneNote if you're more of an Obsidian user. Whatever it is, ideally it's a piece of software that's simple enough to use on a day-to-day basis that it won't be annoying, but flexible enough to let you customize it in ways that are going to help it work for you. Once you have an application chosen for this, you're ready to use it and make the magic happen. In short, the way you're going to use this is to make a to-do list and divide the things on that list into both what I'm calling tasks and then other things that are important actions towards your goals, and then schedule those things. Now, let me differentiate between those two. Tasks are those things that you just have to do, right? As a human, there's going to be small things that nag you day to day. Something's broken in your house, you got to run some errands, but they don't really trace to anything important. They're just the random to-do list of life. The other things, though, are the specific steps and to-do items that track directly to achieving those goals and making progress on things that truly matter. And the combination of knowing what those things are and where you're going to fit them into your schedule is what is the real magic of this system. And that application should allow you to put those two pieces together. This simple change and using this system is what really upped the game for me. Every morning I try to think about what I need to do that day, both the tasks and the actions toward those goals. And I look at my calendar in this system that I use in OneNote, and I try to schedule those things very intentionally. I 100% know this may sound insane and over the top to some people, but I found it works for me, and it keeps me on track and true about what I'm really doing and how I'm going to spend my time. And that's really all I care about. It works for me. Use whatever works for you. At this point, you should have a full chain of what you want to accomplish, all the way from life-aligned values and big goals to how you're going to get there and the daily actions you can take, and a place to put and track those daily actions. So it's time to put this all to work. Step 3 is how to actually execute on a day-to-day basis. Now that we're ready to execute, what am I actually doing every single day that makes all this work? Well, first, a quick anecdote. One quote I love and I think exemplifies this whole system for me is this: "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." For those who have taken my Sec 450 Blue Team Fundamentals class, you know that I both have that quote on the very last slide of the class, as well as on the back of the challenge coin for the class that goes to the team that wins the CTF. I put that there because I think that's a very useful quote to keep in mind. Here's the real story behind why that's there, which I don't fully explain in the notes in class. When I first agreed to write that class, it was the first SANS class I wrote in full, and I was incredibly excited, but that excitement quickly turned to fear and dread as I realized I just signed myself up for a high-stakes game that required me to create nearly 900 slides of content and notes, and hundreds of pages of lab material with data generation, virtual machines, and everything that goes along with it. It was a monumental amount of work. I was working on building that class as my full-time job, and it was incredibly difficult. Every day was filled with more and more PowerPoint, more lab data generation, careful instruction writing, testing, and the task seemed overwhelming, especially early on when I saw no end in sight. One day I was stuck, and I went to a coffee shop here in Philly to change my work environment and get the creative juices flowing and the inspiration moving once again. And there was a sign on the wall that had that quote: "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." I realized that, well, yes, I did have a mountain of work to do. If I looked at it in another way, it wasn't really a mountain of work. It was really just staying committed to taking a single small chunk of work and doing that small chunk of work every single day over an extended period of time. I would eventually arrive at my destination if I did that no matter what. And well, 10 months later, I did eventually get there. And though, of course, it was a very difficult task, I started to look at it more like building a wall. You're laying a little brick every day, right? You're not building a house. You just have to set a few more bricks. And when you look at it like that, it's a lot more tolerable when you feel overwhelmed with the amount of work you might have to do. Well, writing that course, that quote bounced around in my head, and every day I realized no matter how impossible a task or a goal seemed, all you really need to do is take a single slice each day and figure out how to get it done, and just do that again and again. A manageable daily amount of work over the long term adds up to something huge and something seemingly unachievable, especially at the start. I learned that lesson through writing that class, and I end the course with that quote not only because it's meaningful to me, but I hope to inspire students to come to the same realization. Nothing is impossible if you plan it correctly. There's a proverb: how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Seems silly, but the meaning there is deep. It is the same lesson, and it's the lesson we need to apply in the execute phase. So, back to how we're going to do that. In OneNote, on that page that I make for every week is a table for each day of the week. I have one column for every day from Sunday through Saturday, and that column is broken up into multiple different pieces that I have sections of the day in and a task list at the bottom. So it's basically a bunch of columns with a bunch of dividing lines in it. The day section area is a bit like a calendar, but less structured hour by hour. And I basically break it up into what is before work. So usually for me, that's like 5 a.m. to maybe 7 or 8 a.m. and the start of the workday until lunch until the end of the workday, and then dinner and beyond until I go to sleep at night. I found those are kind of the phases of my day and what is meaningful for me when it comes to planning. Yours might be different. I also have a to-do list below the calendar with a list of all of the things that I need to get done, separated into what aligns with my real goals and what is a random life task. One mental model you can apply at this stage is called the Eisenhower matrix. This basically suggests you separate urgent from important on your to-do list and realize that not all urgent things are important. In this system, important to me means aligned with one of those goals, or maybe that something bad will happen if I don't get that task done ASAP. Everything else is a task, right? And it gets slotted in the extra time when I actually have time to get around to it because it's not truly important. Even if it's something that's urgent and someone else wants me to get it done, sometimes you have to be ruthless and say, you know what, I need to focus on my priorities right now. Each week and each day, start with a moment of quick planning. Gaze at your week and look at each day and think about your calendar. Fill in the meetings and the other things that you have going on so you know what actual amount of free time you really have and what time is taken. Then look down at your to-do list section and start with the important tasks and take an important task category item and place it somewhere on your day. When you get all these things filled in, you're going to have some time left over ideally. And then in those shorter gaps and times where you know you're not going to be able to focus, maybe those 30 minutes in between meetings, that's where you can put those other life to-do tasks because you're never going to get into that flow state in that time, but you do need to get those tasks done eventually. So slot them in after you have placed the bigger, more important items there. This is an incredibly powerful technique for me for two different reasons. One is that as soon as I started doing this, I had the realization that I need to first and foremost ensure that I get those goal-aligned things done, no matter what. In other words, schedule taking a bite out of that elephant every single day. If you don't schedule it, it's probably not going to happen. This technique forces you to plan when you're going to do those things, and it gives them priority in planning your day. The second is I realized once I started doing that life often takes over and overrides my plans, and that's okay. It happens. But how do we compensate for that? Well, if you want to make sure you always have that time, you need to think about where can you find or make uninterrupted time in your day to put those priorities so that you can guarantee every day will have at least a little chunk of time for them. For me, that was a realization that the space I needed was before work, where my mind was fresh and before I was exhausted by the workday. So I started waking up early. And since 2015, nearly every day, I've woken up near 5 a.m. and used that time from 5 until whenever the rest of the workday starts to work on those priorities. No one else is awake at that time. Emails are not coming in. All I do is wake up, have my coffee, and get right to it. Focus like a laser directly on those things. Don't even pick up your phone. Don't look at your email. Everything else can wait. At 5 a.m., no one needs your attention. At that point, everyone assumes you're sleeping anyway. So you can do whatever you want. You can tune out the news. You can tune out your emails. It's great. This will guarantee that you hit that first step for the day, and it will be something that aligns with getting to those big goals before your normal day even starts. So if anything gets in the way and your day gets completely derailed, you still made a little bit of progress. This is the one thing that I believe has most contributed to my success over the past decade. It's a guaranteed small amount of progress that will happen each day. Now, here are some common problems that will probably come up along the way. Confusion about what to do next, procrastination, low energy levels, life. What if you don't know what steps to take next? What if you don't feel like taking those steps? I have two quick thoughts on that hopefully can help you push through these common challenges as well. One is that if you ever feel stuck and don't actually know what to do next, look at someone who has already achieved that goal, accomplished a similar project, or done something similar to whatever it is you're trying to do. As they say, success leaves clues. So use your hacker brain and reverse engineer how someone else has done a similar thing, and then use their methods for creative or direct inspiration and guidance on how you can do it as well. Literally deconstruct the pieces of work that they've done and say, how did they do piece A, piece B, piece C? What resources do I need? And then go out and find those things and get it done. You don't need to reinvent the wheel to do things. You don't have to figure things out from scratch. There are guides out there. It's a simple Google away or some clever reversing of what someone else has already done, and that can get you set on the right path. Just see what's out there that already exists and leverage it for guidance on what you need to do or learn next. A great book for this mindset is called Steal Like an Artist from an author named Austin Kleon. Second thing is, what if you don't feel like getting things done? We all have those slow days or tired, low energy days, and sometimes you have to take what I would call the next smallest action in order to make progress. And I often find that progress leads to motivation to keep going once you start, even if the action you took was very, very small. So for example, say you have to figure out what to do next, and it's something you've never done before. I've realized that a blank screen or an undefined task is one of the things that will absolutely halt me in my tracks. And I realize if I don't know what I need to do or how to do it or what I'm even needing to do, that's the moment where I just sit there and freeze up. And I assume most people are similar. So in these moments, you have to break that problem down and say, well, how can I further define what this task actually is? And then break it into maybe even a silly sized, tiny chunk of work, right? This could include as simple of things as just simply open your browser, search YouTube for people who have already done that thing, make a list of tools that might help you, make a list of single features in those tools, and then try them out. Whatever it is, break it down into a just absurdly, ridiculously small step. And if you can take that step, then you can often take the very next tiniest step, even if it's just logging into a website, looking at some data, whatever it is. That progress will be forward progress, and it will lead you in the right direction and often leads to further motivation. Let's say it's writing. You're facing a blank page. Someone says, here, write an article on this. And you're like, I don't even know where to start. This is a terrible place to be, and I hate it. But what I've found is if I can break down that article in my head and use a top-down process to understand what I should put in the article, no longer is a blank page the most terrible thing on earth. I ask myself, well, what is this article about? What would a good article about that topic entail? What might be some main points that need to be in this article? What are some core concerns? Start with the headings, make an outline before you actually write any sentences. Fill in points, fill in subpoints, and then write the actual text. Starting from a blank cursor feels nearly impossible, but when you then put on the words intro, conclusion, body, and then you say, well, what needs to be in the body? Point 1, point 2, point 3. Well, what would those be? Let me go find one of the most important things, the second most important thing. You fill those in. What are the core pieces of those 3 main points you want to make? Once you have those headings in there, you can often figure out how to make progress on it and turn that blank page fear into an actually written article. Finally, to wrap this whole system up, at the end of each week, month, and quarter, be sure to look back at your system of record and think about what did you accomplish and get feedback on how much you actually can do in a given time frame and adjust for the future if it was wrong, and also celebrate those wins. One of the really useful things about this system is it also creates a done list from all the finished mini steps that you've taken all over the days and weeks. If you're ever feeling like you didn't accomplish what you wanted to accomplish, you can always go and glance back at all those check boxes and consider all the things you actually did get done, as opposed to the opposite way, staring at a to-do list and reminding yourself of all the things you could do. The done list reminds you of all the things that you've already done, and you can feel good about yourself instead of the other direction. Finally, and most importantly, remember that you are a finite human and that no one can do everything on the to-do list, especially the task-related stuff that isn't really truly important anyway. There's actually a freedom and power in admitting that you are limited in what you can do, and some of the things will be dropped, and that is okay. Once you realize it's literally impossible to do everything you want to do, you can stop feeling bad about not having it all done. It could never have been done anyway in the first place. This is a mindset that I've taken from one of the books I've recently read that I would encourage anyone with a productivity-leaning mind to read as a serious and important reality check. The book is called 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals, and in a way, it's an anti-productivity book that is a balance to where a system like this can take you if you go too far with it. I realize that some of you may think that all of this is totally insane, and I get that. I often think that I'm crazy for it as well. But for me, it returns results, which I can't argue with. I have to balance that, though, with the reality of I can't possibly do everything, and it's okay. So let me be clear on this episode as we wrap it up here. I'm not saying burn yourself out, going crazy, setting and obsessively tracking and hitting goals. While that can work fine in a short term and you might be able to pull off some heroics, what I've said here needs to be done in a manageable way that is sustainable over the years. And that's why I've mentioned feedback and checking what is realistic several times along the way. We're not trying to overload ourselves. We're just trying to be intentional about what we are doing and what we're spending our time on. So I'm not saying make a mountain of work for yourself. I'm saying make sure that the time you do use is put towards what will truly make you happy and move the needle in your career and in your life. That book is a great reality check on doing that in a sustainable way and a great counterbalance to what I've said here. No matter who you are, InfoSec is a crazy, fast-paced industry, and the book is something that I think every single person could benefit from. So if you take nothing else from this episode, this might be the one resource you want to look at as it provides a fresh perspective on the realities of being a single, limited human. And it's something I've never seen anywhere else. And it's delivered in a way that leaves you actually feeling refreshed and validated as opposed to behind on all the work you could be doing. And so that's basically the system. Think about very carefully what you want to do and why you want to do it and how that aligns with your highest level goals. And then take those things and then back them all the way down into very, very small individual bite-sized actions, and then have a system to make sure you can actually get those actions done on a day-to-day basis. Really, if I was going to wrap up this whole episode, that would be it. You just need to make sure that you can take small bites every day of the task. And no matter what that task is, eventually you're going to be able to figure it out. Any InfoSec project, any career goal, you can break it down into micro steps. And once you figure out how to do that and put those things on your schedule and make sure they get done, you will be on the path to success. And so that's it. This episode was certainly a departure from anything else I've ever done here before, and I'd like to know if you enjoyed it. So feel free to either reply or post feedback about it on LinkedIn and tag me so I can see what you think. or use the feedback system built into the show notes to let me know if you'd like more high-level content like this mixed into the security operations topics that we also talk about. With that, I'd like to wish all of you a happy and productive new year and hope that you all had a restful holiday break with friends and family. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back again soon with another new episode of Blueprint.